Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness, and Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and here's my awesome co-host, Donovan. And today I have a very special guest. Beth Shaw is a best-selling author, nutritionist, mind-body expert, and founder of YogaFit, an international mind-body training school. She is a well-respected entrepreneur who has the distinction of being one of the few women business owners of scale in the fitness industry for over 20 years. Please welcome Beth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So tell us a little about your story into the mind-body space and yoga. How did that happen?
Well, it actually started when I was very young. At age 6, I taught myself guided meditation and imagery because I used to suffer from horrible migraine headaches. And I grew up in a family where people were not that invested in what was going on with me. So I learned to cure those migraines by just visualizing myself on a beach or in the forest and doing some deep breathing. That's kind of where my mind-body journey began. I used to practice yoga poses as a child, not really knowing what they were. And then in college, I was stretching one day after a workout, and it's like the sky opened up and there was a message, and I just got the message that I was going to be successful in the health and fitness space. So those are kind of my touch points for getting started in the industry that I'm currently in.
Great. And what kind of drew you to the yoga aspect?
I started practicing formal yoga when I moved to Los Angeles after college, and I just really fell in love with it. There weren't many teacher trainings at the time, so I went in residence for about a month somewhere. When I came back to start teaching in health clubs in Los Angeles, I found that, teaching in a health club required a very certain format and style that I wasn't taught, and I kind of developed. The name YogaFit came to me one day on a bike ride. I trademarked it. One of my students, who was very into Tai Chi, and he was also an investor, saw the potential in the brand. By that time, I had put it on a bunch of clothing, my logo, when I was teaching. And he helped me raise money, of which he put in some himself, and we incorporated in 1997. And we've been operating as a school pretty much ever since.
So there's a lot of interesting things in your background, I noticed as I was poking around. So can we actually just keep going towards the present from that point? I mean, there's been several years between now and then, and I know you've been up to some awesome things. If you could fill in some of the other cool projects that you've worked on since then.
Since then, obviously, I've had the opportunity to go to India. In fact, at YogaFit, we take groups to India every year, and that's been hugely transformational for me. Doing what I do forces me to stay in alignment with the teachings of our school. And so I'm constantly just working on improving myself in every way. And I like to call yoga the gateway drug, because for me, it opened the door to so many beautiful, wonderful explorations, whether it's meditation or plant medicine or, studying things in Asia. It really opened me up to the possibilities of the universe, and then just a lot of great teachings that we're able to bring to people through our school.
Yeah, I love it. I definitely had a really positive experience with yoga myself. And, I'd say it is kind of like a gateway drug to open your mind to mindfulness, meditation, more alternative therapies. One of the things that resonated with me with what you said, and I love that you termed or coined the term yoga fit, because for me, I do enjoy yoga, but it really depends on the style there, because there's so many different styles out there. Like a general like hatha yoga is nice, but like the gentle yoga, it's like nice and calming. But I feel like I was always in the mindset like, no, I gotta break a sweat. It's gotta be hard for me to feel like I got something out of it. So I would go like gravitate more to the like vinyasa and the hot yoga and things like that. So I'd be curious, what styles do you particularly like?
Well, the style that we teach is called YogaFit, and it models the traditional group exercise format of warm up, work, and cool down.
Mhm.
Very appropriate for health club environments. Obviously, we've grown so much as a school in 23 years that we really have every different type of yoga now. We have restorative yoga and yin yoga. We yoga as therapy, many mental health programs. Our YogaFit Warriors program helps people who are dealing with PTSD, trauma, depression, anxiety. And I've actually struggled with a mood disorder my entire life. So, and I really go into it in this, which is my most recent book. It's called Healing Trauma with Yoga. And there are a lot of practical tips in there for people to really take their mental health into their own hands on a daily basis. So, every day you can pretty much find me in my headstand machine with my red lights in my face, just trying to keep my mood elevated. And I think that people really, such as yourself, need to find styles that work best for them and not just, go to one yoga class and maybe they don't have the best experience and then they stop there, because there's so many different styles and really different times of the day and different times of our life. And as women, different times of the month, we're going to need different styles. I just got back actually from having a workout at the gym, and I always finish my workout with at least 10 minutes of just some lower back stretches and stretching out my hips and hamstrings and things that if I wasn't doing, I'd have a lot of repetitive use injuries. So yoga is so nice because it can apply to anything and make whatever sport you're doing, whatever activity, more enjoyable, and you'll have less injuries.
Yeah. One of the things that I think a lot of common misconceptions about yoga is, like, I think some people who've never done it, they have this idea that, like, it's for really super flexible fit, like girls in their 20s or something like that. But it really is for everyone. It's just finding the right style for you. So what would you say to someone who was just like a complete novice, don't really know how to even get started? How would they even begin that process?
I mean, they can find a local studio. They can go to a class at their gym. They can go on our website at yogafit.com and search an instructor in their area. But I would really suggest, and I did this too before I took any teacher trainings, is I tried all different types of yoga. And there were, now of course it's more challenging for me because I'm a little bit more of a discerning customer, but I think you can always find something good about pretty much every class as long as it's safe.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what you're saying about finding the style that works for you. I actually don't have a ton of yoga experience. So if there are broad categories or buckets or different types of yoga that we could just go through briefly, like touch on what different styles are or how they might come across or what you do. I'm not asking a very clear question because I'm not that well versed in the space, but if you could just give some like broad definitions, that'd be awesome.
So if people are looking for a more athletic activity, they can do Ashtanga, they can do a Vinyasa style, they can do hot yoga. If they're looking for something more relaxing, to calm their anxiety, to get into their sympathetic nervous system, then they can do restorative yoga, yin yoga. So there are, or if someone's looking to activate their chakras and raise their energetic vibration, they might want to try Kundalini yoga. Those are just a few styles that I think cover what most people are looking for.
Yeah, that's great because I have been to several yoga classes and not paid attention to what the different styles were or whatnot. So I have been pleasantly and unpleasantly surprised in ways of like, okay, I'm ready to get a workout, and then calmed and brought all the way down. Or like, okay, I'm ready to, like really push it, and then it's like really hard advanced stretching moves that like I don't have the flexibility for. So I think that'll be helpful for people who are, like we were talking about, sort of just starting to get into it and being able to discern which style might be a fit for them in general, or at least for the mood of the day, because I did not follow that very well at all in the past.
Yeah. And I'd love to get a little more into since you wrote a book about healing trauma with yoga, you can speak a little more on that. Like, what's the mechanism or what's the approach behind it? Like, how does that work?
Well, the approach behind it, the book starts out with the ACE test, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, which I think is a test that, I wish they were to give us in school when we were
Yeah.
all 16 years old. And
Right.
it's a simple 9-point test that helps you to determine how much trauma you have.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, the more, and I have childhood trauma too. Again, I put that in the book. The more trauma you have, the more likelihood that you're going to move towards addiction,
Mhm.
bad relationships, unstable job history, divorce, suicidal tendencies. There's a whole list, unfortunately. But I think, like anything else, awareness is the first step. So the book opens with that, and then we get into how trauma affects the brain. Now, I think right now everybody should be reading the book, because, like, if people weren't traumatized pre-COVID, we've all been traumatized.
Yeah.
Every time I go into my apartment building, I still have a little catch that, oh, I don't have my mask, and we don't need masks anymore. But I have that, like, ingrained anxiety response just for something so simple as, do I have my mask or not? And I know that a lot of people are struggling right now with a lot of trauma, depression. Even myself, I have all the tools available to me, but because my life has changed so much due to COVID, and I'm not traveling around the world and presenting and teaching and all of that, I still struggle also. So the book, as we get into how yoga helps with trauma and some specific yoga poses that actually release trauma from the body, which we teach in our YogaFit Warriors program, then the book gets into solutions, which is where I like to focus. So we talk about meditation, sound healing, Ayurveda, clean eating for better mental health. There's a whole chapter. My favorite chapter is chapter 12, which is about living your best life, and basically has 22 tips of little things that you can do every day just to feel better. So it's a very comprehensive book. It's very solution oriented. But I think one of the things that differentiates the book from other books is that not only do I share my story, but we have 13 other people sharing their trauma stories, and then how they were able to either just mitigate their symptoms or recover from trauma or cope better using, again, things like sound healing, meditation, breathing exercises, Ayurvedic hacks. So you get real life stories, very diverse stories too, which are great. There's one story that I love about a gentleman who was with the Canadian military, and they had to go where there was a big plane crash out in Nova Scotia. And he was so traumatized from having to deal with the carnage of that he started drinking, became an alcoholic. At some point, he got sober, started practicing yoga. He's been trained by YogaFit and now teaches. And, I also love it because I like it when men share their stories too, because you don't always find men as open to sharing their traumatic stories as you do women. So we've got a nice cross section in the book of people sharing their trauma and triumphing over the trauma using different mind-body applications.
I love that. Yes, I as a naturopathic doctor, I see it all the time because I specialize in stress and anxiety. That oftentimes there's this history of trauma or childhood wounds that really affects people, especially in their bodies. I think the trauma gets stored in our bodies, and it's a hard thing to release. So I could see how yoga can be a way to help release that trauma, and definitely be a really powerful tool. Yeah.
And a lot of people, they're practicing yoga, and maybe they get an insight during final relaxation, shavasana, about something that happened to them, or they're in a specific pose. I remember once I was teaching someone who had recovered from a heart attack, and he was in a chest expansion and then had like a flashback of being on the table. And, he really had like a moment, and it's because the issues are literally stored in our tissues. So reading the body of trauma on a regular basis is, I think it's very helpful, and also it's necessary.
I'm curious, do you find that sort of doing, and you mentioned a bunch of different tactics, so it may already be covered, but do you find that doing sort of some of these yoga poses releases the trauma in a way that is complete on its own, or do you find that there are other mental tools or other, like outside tools that you need? So for example, you mentioned the person who, was kind of having this flashback to this heart attack type thing, right? And maybe I'm extrapolating a little bit, but maybe it was a moment of like wrestling with mortality or something like that. Do you find that there are other pieces that need to come into play to help people like move through some of these experiences, or is it really that kind of releasing the trauma through the different poses and the different physical movements is enough to help them move past it? I don't know if does that make sense?
I mean, that's an interesting question. And I'll tell you another story. I had a very good friend that I grew up with in New York City. Actually, her brother was my first boyfriend. And he died in his 40s of here we go again, widowmaker heart attack.
Oh.
And then his wife had cancer and died like a year later. So my friend, who was also a military correspondent in the Middle East, and she was working for Fox News in Iraq, and had a lot of trauma from that. And then also having to raise her brother's kids. She and her mom had to raise Sean's kids. And she obviously had been through a lot of therapy and all of that. I took her to one of our YogaFit Warriors trainings, and she was able to have her medication after the weekend. And I would be remiss to say that yoga is going to take care of everything, because it doesn't. But I think it's a very multifaceted approach, depending upon the individual. Definitely talk therapy is helpful. Group therapy is super helpful. Things like Alice is doing, acupuncture, herbal medicine, also very important. We're so complex as beings, and trauma affects everyone similarly in that it changes the brain, and it shrinks our prefrontal cortex, and it makes us stay in fight or flight a lot more often, and hypervigilance and all of that. But also it affects people in different ways, and different people need different tools to heal. So I always I wrote another book called Yoga Lean, and in this book I talk about how weight loss needs to be a very multifaceted approach. So I feel the same way about trauma. I think that people should, be open to as many different things as possible to heal. And some things that might be a little bit non-traditional, again, like plant medicine, I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, I know. I concur. I concur with that sentiment, because it's like, hey, if it helps you, do it. There's so many tools available, so why not utilize as many as you can to help you feel the best, because it is so multifaceted.
And it blows my mind. I recently found out a friend of mine that had been a binge drinker from age 13 to 32, who was, now nearing 50, had never even been to traditional talk therapy. And I think that because we're all in the field, we naturally assume that everyone's going to be doing therapy and doing groups and doing all these different things. But a lot of people just, will suffer sometimes in silence and not reach out to, whatever it is, 12-step programs or whatever. There's so many resources out there and so many different solutions. It would just be my hope that people will try as many different things as possible just to see what works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be curious, as a stress and anxiety doctor, I sometimes experience people that have just so much trauma, PTSD, where they like trying to get them to relax is very challenging. So I can imagine getting them to relax in yoga can be a challenge for them. So do you have any tools or suggestions for people who are just like so rigid in their body, and that they have because like allowing them to relax makes them feel vulnerable and perhaps unsafe. So it's like, do you have any ideas or suggestions for those types of people that really, they can't even do like even very basic poses or something like that?
Well, it's interesting because we have several trauma-informed yoga trainings at YogaFit, and I actually once made the mistake of going into one of them and having people like dance around a little bit with their backs turned towards the doors and the walls, and people were, really having a challenge just with that. So in our trauma-informed yoga, we make sure that people know where the exits are. You can imagine dealing with people who are in the military. They always want to know where the exits are. Keeping the room dim but not completely dark. before I'll adjust anyone in a pose, I always say I'm coming around to make adjustments. If you don't want to be adjusted, let me know. Because even if you have people in final relaxation and you go to pull their ankles in Shavasana or something, if someone's, had some kind of sexual trauma or physical trauma, they're going to jump through the roof. It's happened. And you're going to just take away all the good work you did teaching them yoga for an hour.
Right.
So I like our style in particular for trauma-based yoga because it's a lot of repetitive flow, at least for the first 20 to 30 minutes. And what happens to the brain is that it becomes entrainment. It almost becomes like a hypnotic state because we match breath with movement. So you're able to really kind of get into that more of a rest and digest place than fight or flight. It takes time, but it happens. And, you probably can relate to this from going to the gym and, you might not feel like you want to be there for a workout, but then 20, 25 minutes in, you're feeling good. I think it takes that long for us to get into a certain zone.
Yeah, as I was listening, it kind of stood out to me. It sounds like there are certain types of trauma that really carry themselves in the body in a way that basically you dissociate or just aren't as comfortable leaving your body in a relaxed state or having yourself, at least for me, whenever I'm doing yoga, I feel very vulnerable because I'm twisted all kinds of different ways and stretched out. And it sounds like that's a really strong step to bringing yourself back into alignment with your body and having more comfort around some of those pieces. So I going back to a couple of steps before when we were talking about sort of dealing with the trauma with different tools, it probably makes sense, or it now makes sense to me that for a lot of people find it a really valuable tool that they may not get the same kind of value from, like talk therapy or something, because so much of the trauma experience or what they're kind of protecting themselves against or shelling up against is this sort of physical space. So there's not really a question here, but it's just something that kind of tumbled out as I was listening.
These are all very excellent points and very intelligent to bring up. So thank you for that. I know personally, like one of the best things I can do for people is to give them the gift of really being in their bodies and experiencing that. Because when people get comfortable being in the bodies that they're in, the judgment starts to go away, the resistance starts to go away, and they really start to live a fully expressed life. And one of the most beautiful things that happen also is that people then start to take care of their bodies better. They put the right foods in them, they don't abuse alcohol, or they don't overdo anything. And a lot of times we find with people who have trauma is that they become severely overweight as a barrier mechanism to keep people literally physically away from them. They might resort to other substances as an addictive mechanism, but you'll find that a lot of people who have severe weight problems had some type of trauma and they're really just shielding themselves. The thing is that it doesn't feel good to live in a body that's not healthy. So then you're compounding the problem of the original trauma with the trauma of just living in something you're not comfortable in every day, because we only get one body each lifetime and we have to live in it. Unless you're doing some intense heavy duty meditation or do a ceremony for a night, but you're coming back into your body. So I just really like our practice because it gives people the gift of their bodies and therapy. Look, I've been in and out of therapy since 22 years old. I think therapy is great. However, it's hard to deconstruct the mind with the mind. And with talk therapy, you may feel better for a little while, but then you're not going to, or you're also putting the reliance on an external source, which I think for periods of time is okay. But at the end of the day, I really want to see people take charge of their own physical and mental health, which is not to say they can't go get a prescription medication for something or whatever, but just knowing that you're in charge of your health, your physical health, your mental health, and there are things you can do to improve both, I think empowers an individual. And again, my goal is to just empower as many people as possible to be their most fully expressed selves, live their best life, and carry with them and live in the healthiest body possible.
Absolutely. That was so beautifully expressed. And I agree that, empowerment is so important in that there's so many things that we can do, but we have to start by taking care of ourselves and practicing self-care, self-love, to really even begin that journey. And yeah, therapy is absolutely beneficial, but there's a lot of things that you have to do on your own to really fully heal completely. Mm-hmm.
And I think, healing is a one day at a time proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Some days are going to be better than others. Again, because I've struggled with a mood disorder for most of my life. Some days are great, other days suck.
Yeah.
But at least when the days suck, I can acknowledge what's going on. I can take a tool from my tool basket, whether it's my heads down with my red light or going to the gym, or simply just saying, I'm going to just sit in this space until it passes, because I know that it will. One of the most valuable things I do for mood regulation is meditation. I'll work a lot and I'll get like kind of frenetic and I'll get all these ideas because I'm a very creative person. And then at a certain point during the day, I'm like, I just need to stop. I need to meditate. Can be a guided meditation, can be TM, it can be whatever type of meditation. Just like yoga, try different ones, see what works for you. If you really want a low maintenance meditation, get on YouTube and find a guided meditation. I have a couple of them on iTunes also. But meditation is a great way to kind of take the garbage out of our minds, recenter ourselves, and also get a reset.
Yes, totally. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for mindfulness and meditation for sure, because I think a lot of us, especially in the US, we're just so like go, go, go culture. And there's something profound and beautiful in just being able to be in the stillness, to be present in the moment, rest and recover can go such a long way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't give enough value to rest. We're always on social media or our phones, and we're bombarded constantly. And it's so valuable to create some space for yourself physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
So on that note, with the meditation piece, I know a lot of people talk about kind of yoga and meditation having some number of overlaps. I don't think I've done enough yoga to get there, because when I do it, I'm not in a meditative state, right? I'm in a very focused, like, how do I get into this pose? How do I do this? So I'd be curious what you see as some of the connections there, and maybe what, if that's something you experience, what maybe the process that you go through is, if you're going to have like a yoga practice that's also going to be meditative, or if it just happens naturally, or just kind of how those pieces come together for you.
Okay, well, yoga was actually originally designed just to ready the body for meditation, so people could sit for periods of time without, getting antsy or having their joints hurt or their muscles, their bones. So yoga was designed to ready the body for meditation. To be honest with you, when I practice, it's not always a meditative state. Sometimes it takes a little while to get in there. I think that the best way for anyone to try to find that meditative state is just to focus on their breath. If it's a style that emphasizes breath with movement, that becomes an easier way to get into that meditative state. I also find that anything that creates a flow state for us, where we're not thinking about anything else because we have to focus. Like if I go take a tennis lesson, or I do Pilates because I'm new to Pilates, I'm completely focused on just trying to do it right, which, you said that you're having that experience during yoga. That's not the worst thing in the world, because at least you have a single pointed focus as opposed to thinking about 1,000 other different things. So I think being gentle with ourselves during our process and our practice is also helpful. A lot of times people will be like, I'm not meditating properly because my mind is wandering so much. There's a huge value in just to sit and watch the mind do what it does, and just sit back and become the observer to the mind, so that we know we're not these bodies, but we're in them. We're not these minds, but they're kind of running us. So to connect with source consciousness, to get out of the mental state, even if you're just watching, is hugely valuable. I've also used meditation to heal myself very quickly by sending energy to different parts of my body, everything from twisted ankle to urinary tract infection. I've used meditation to heal. Again, I'm not telling anyone that they shouldn't use medication when needed, but I believe that the practice of sending energy and focusing, and that's something that people can do during their meditation also, is just to send energy through their body, to send light to different parts of their bodies that might need it. At this time, probably everybody needs their heart center to be opened up a little bit more because we've been so disconnected from people for the past 16 months. That these are all things that you can do to just kind of be in that space more often.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And you had just mentioned source consciousness, and I was reading the notes. You mentioned something about lean consciousness. Is that the same thing, or what is lean?
The lean consciousness comes from yoga lean, and I came up with that because in yoga we have something called witness consciousness, where we kind of get to witness our mind, our body, all our actions, all of that. And lean consciousness to me means being so in touch with your physical body that you know exactly what foods to put in it, what nutrients you need. So that and maybe one day for people that's going to be a burger and things that you think, people think, that's going to make me gain weight or whatever. But if you get to a point where you're very much in tune with your body, then you know what to feed it, who to hang out with. Some people might not have an energy that's going to be serving you to spend time with. So that's where that whole lean consciousness term came from. I go into it more deeply in the book.
Well, I'm going to try to rephrase what you said, and if I'm wrong, then correct me where I messed it up. But it sounds like to me, it's the lean consciousness is kind of an idea to apply to your life broadly about making sure that sort of the things that you're interacting with, I guess, the choices you're making, end up putting you in a place that you can feel good about. So it's kind of in a way, a sort of like mindfulness around the actions you're taking to make sure that they're in alignment with the outcomes that you want. Tell me where I jumbled that up.
Perfect. That's perfect. I love that. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. I kind of get the sense of like kind of trusting or actually refining your intuition enough to know what your body needs specifically.
At YogaFit, we have the essence of YogaFit, which we like to remind our students of during class, and that's breathing, feeling, listening to your body, letting go of judgment, expectation, and competition, and be present in the moment. And I think that listening to our body piece is something that we're not taught as children, unfortunately. If we're lucky at some point during our lives, we stop long enough to learn that skill, to listen to our body. I believe our bodies don't lie. So if we really tap in, again, through practices like yoga and physical practices that get us more in touch with our bodies, we're going to be making a lot better decisions for ourselves on a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah, that piece definitely rings true for me. I know that it has taken me until just the last couple of years to get in touch with my body and realize that there is so much more information in my experience to make decisions from, as opposed to just this singular, like, they're all logical, so I don't want to use the word logic, but just this sort of rational thinking, like, okay, this is the right thing. This is the right thing. Oh, I can't think of a reason that this is not the right thing or whatever else, and realizing just how much more rich information there is in, like, how do I feel today? How am I carrying myself? What's my posture like? What are all these other things? And then all the other signals that those have, which is to say that sometimes I don't think I'm stressed until I tap into my body and realize, like, I've been sitting like this all day and my back hurts and my neck is crooked and I feel exhausted. And so I just wanted to highlight or reiterate what you said, which I think is, it's not something that people are generally taught, but it is extremely valuable. And I still think I have a lot of progress to be made, but just in the last couple of years, it's been opening up to me as a source of information equally valuable to sort of this thinking like rational, okay, I know some amount of exercise science, so if I move this way, I should feel better. And I know that I should be doing these things, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, no question there, just reiterating that I also think it's very important.
Yeah, if we, for those listeners who have children, if you can get them practicing yoga from an early age, you'll be helping them develop these very valuable skills that they're probably not going to be taught in school. I remember I was principal for the day in New York City for a few years. And the last time I went into a school, they had like a chart of emotions on the wall with like little
Yeah.
match. And I did a double take and I was like, well, we didn't have this when I was in school. And the woman said, yeah, this is a new thing. So I was very happy to see that people are actually teaching children about emotions, because that's another language that we're not. I mean, I would love to revamp our entire education system, to be honest with you. It would look a lot different. And let's not even talk about school lunches. But for people who have kids, getting them into yoga practice, teaching them meditation is going to go a very long way in them becoming fully expressed, positive, contributing members to society.
Absolutely. I had read an article a few years back of this one school had implemented, I think, both yoga meditation practice for the children. I think they were in middle school. I might be butchering it, but I do remember like the results was that there were like no more suspensions or like reduced detentions, better performance in grades, absolutely made a huge difference. And yeah, no more like less fights and all those things. So obviously very impactful.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in prisons too. And the prisons where we brought YogaFit into, there's less violence that's happening. And, you imagine that someone who is incarcerated has a lot of time on their hands to do a lot of different things. But imagine, if those people are refining their yoga practice or getting into some heavy duty, deep meditation, I believe at that point they can change karma for their next lifetime.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Beth, it's been such a pleasure to have you on our show. Was there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up today?
Well, if anyone is interested in any of our education at YogaFit, we have programs for everyone from mental health professionals to entrepreneurs, kids, a whole bunch of different health programs. They can go to yogafit.com. If anyone wants to read anything about nutrition or see what I'm up to, they can go to my personal website, bethshaw.com. I'm on Instagram, Beth Shaw Mind Body. And you can also find YogaFit on Facebook. So thank you both so much. This has been very lively and great interaction. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for your expertise and your time. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and then go and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you get notified when the next video comes out. If you check out in the description below, go to my website where you can get my free fast and easy guide to stress relief. Thanks again for checking us out, and we'll see you next time.